Do you struggle to remember what you read? This is a common issue many of us face. We pore over pages of books, articles, and documents, only to find that the information seems to slip through our fingers like water. It's like a frustrating game of mental tag, where the facts are always just a bit out of reach. This isn't just about forgetting a character's name in a novel or the twist in a mystery book. It's about that work report you read last week or the research paper you spent hours on, only to realize you can't recall the key points when you need them most. This forgetfulness is not only inconvenient but can also impact our productivity and success. But the real question is, why does this happen? Is it just human nature to forget? Or is there something more to it? And more importantly, what if there was a way to improve our memory retention? To fix a problem, we first need to understand it. So, what happens when we read? Let's dive into the fascinating world of memory retention. When we read, our brain is actively processing information, transforming it from mere words on a page into meaningful concepts and ideas. This process begins with our working, or short-term memory, where immediate perceptions and thoughts reside. It's a bit like a mental sketchpad, allowing us to hold information in our minds for brief periods, typically around 15 to 30 seconds. However, our short-term memory has limited capacity. It can only hold about 7 items at a time, give or take 2. This is why, when we read a long paragraph or a dense piece of text, we might struggle to remember all the details. But here's the interesting part. Not all information stays in our short-term memory. Some of it moves to our long-term memory, a vast storage area capable of holding information for extended periods, from days to a lifetime. This movement from short-term to long-term memory is known as memory consolidation, and it's a crucial part of how we learn and remember. There are several factors that influence memory consolidation. Attention is key. If we're distracted or uninterested, the information is less likely to stick. Emotion also plays a role. We're more likely to remember things that evoke strong feelings. And then there's repetition. The more often we revisit information, the more likely it is to become part of our long-term memory. But memory isn't just about storage. It's also about retrieval, pulling information back out when we need it. And this process isn't always perfect. Sometimes, we know something but can't quite retrieve it, like a name on the tip of our tongue. Or we might remember something incorrectly, a phenomenon known as a memory distortion. Understanding how memory works, from initial perception to long-term storage and retrieval, gives us insight into why we sometimes forget what we read. And more importantly, it provides us with a foundation for improving our memory retention. Because to solve a problem, we must first understand it. Understanding this process is the first step to improving memory retention. The first step to remember what you read is active reading. Now, what does active reading mean? It's not just about skimming through the lines. It's about truly engaging with the text, soaking in every word, every sentence, every idea. Imagine you're having a conversation with the author. Ask questions, challenge assertions, feel the emotions. This engagement helps to form a stronger connection with the content, making it easier to recall later. Next, make notes. Jotting down key points, arguments, or concepts not only helps you understand the material better but also creates a physical memory aid you can refer back to. Lastly, summarizing. Once you've finished a section or a chapter, take a moment to summarize it in your own words. This reinforces your understanding and helps cement the information in your memory. Active reading is the first step in ensuring the information stays with us. It's not a quick fix, but a habit worth cultivating for lifelong learning. The second step is repetition and review. You see, our brains are like muscles. The more we exercise them, the stronger they become. Now, how do we exercise our brains in the context of reading? That's where repetition and review come into play. Every time we come across new information, our minds hold it in the short-term memory. Now, to move this information from the short-term to the long-term memory, we need to revisit it. That's repetition. By going over the information several times, we are essentially strengthening our brain's connection to it. But repetition alone isn't enough. We also need to review what we've read. Reviewing helps us understand the information in a deeper and more meaningful way. It's like retracing our steps in a maze to find the way out. In essence, repetition and review are the tools that help us carve the information into our brains. After all, repetition and review can make the difference between forgetting and remembering. The third step involves harnessing the power of visuals. Our minds are incredibly powerful tools that can create vivid images and scenarios. When we read, we can enhance our memory retention by leveraging this ability. Visualizing the information as we read it, imagining the scenes, the characters, the landscapes, allows us to create a mental picture. This isn't just about seeing words on a page, but about creating a vibrant, moving picture in our minds. It's like painting with words. We transform the text into a mental movie. This technique is not just for fiction. Even for non-fiction or educational materials, we can create diagrams or imagine scenarios that relate to the information. Creating mental images gives the information a tangible form, a sort of mental anchor. This helps us remember and recall the information more effectively. It's as if we're giving our brain a visual shortcut to the information. With visuals, our brain can more easily recall the information we read. So, how can we put all these steps together to remember what we read? Let's do a quick recap. We started off by understanding the problem of forgetting what we read. This is a common issue, but the good news is, it's not an insurmountable one. We have the tools to tackle it head-on. We then dived into the fascinating world of memory. We learned that our brains are not static repositories, but dynamic and ever-changing landscapes. We explored how memories are formed, stored, and retrieved, and how understanding these processes can help us optimize our reading habits for better recall. Next, we delved into the first step, active reading. We discovered that reading is not a passive act, but an interactive engagement with the text. We talked about questioning as we read, making connections, and summarizing information in our own words. These strategies not only make reading more enjoyable but also help to engrave the information deeper into our memory banks. Following this, we discussed the second step, repetition and review. We learned that our brains love patterns and repetition. By revisiting the material, summarizing it, and even teaching it to others, we reinforce the neural pathways associated with that information, making it easier to retrieve later. Then, we ventured into the power of visuals. We explored how our brains are wired to respond to images, and how creating mental or actual visuals can aid in memory retention. We talked about creating mind maps, drawing diagrams, or simply visualizing the information in our minds. Now, it's important to remember that improving memory retention is a process. It might take time. You may not see immediate results, but don't be discouraged. The brain is like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it becomes. These steps are not quick fixes, but rather, they are habits to be cultivated over time. By practicing these steps, you can enhance your memory and remember more of what you read. So go ahead, start your journey towards better memory retention. Happy reading!